Hello everyone, welcome to Drishti IAS. You're watching the NCERT Foundation Series and today we are going to cover the remaining topics or let's say a few more concepts of your Class 11 NCERT Chapter 5 titled The Legislature, and we shall do so with the help of MCQs and PYQs wherever relevant. So without further ado, let's plunge right in and move on to the previous day question. The question asked you, which of the following correctly states the reason the Rajya Sabha cannot remove the government through a no confidence motion? Why can the Rajya Sabha not move a no confidence motion against the government? The question is fairly straightforward, although verbose, and the answer is also fairly straightforward. It's because the Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister is collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha, and with this, option C happens to be your correct answer. This is the most basic feature of our parliamentary form of the government, the parliamentary form of government as is adopted in India. Consider the following statements, and we are dealing with this question, a PYQ from 2013. 1. The Council of Ministers and the Centre shall be collectively responsible to the Parliament. Now, in the preceding question just a couple of moments ago, we discussed that the Council of Ministers shall be collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha and not the Parliament. The Parliament includes both the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. However, the Council of Ministers is responsible only to the Lok Sabha, and hence we can eliminate this statement simply because this is how a trick can be played on you by the UPSC. And this might appear like a very straightforward question without any confusion. But if you dig deeper, you'll realize that there is definitely a scope of error. The statement 2 says the union ministers shall hold office during the pleasure of the president. Now, this statement is also correct. The union ministers, remember, we are not talking about the council of ministers here, but rather simply the union ministers who hold any portfolio in the government. So, it says it shall hold office during the pleasure of the president. Now, while this statement is indeed correct, the pleasure of the president should not be confused with him having or her having a discretionary power. The pleasure of the president in this case does not equate with either a constitutional or a circumstantial discretion, but on the contrary, here again, the president shall act on the advice of the Prime Minister regarding the removal of a certain union minister. So this statement is correct. Statement 3 says the Prime Minister shall communicate to the President about the proposals for legislation. Now this again is correct, and if you look at Article 78, Clause C, we realize that it is indeed the duty of the Prime Minister, and the article says it shall be the duty of the Prime Minister. It shall be the duty of the Prime Minister to furnish all information, or necessary information to the President regarding what? Regarding decisions of the Council of Ministers, basically decisions of the Cabinet, but of course, decision of the Council of Ministers is said. The term Council of Ministers is used in the Constitution and not the Cabinet. So, decision of the Council of Ministers, any information regarding the matters of administration or any administrative affairs, as well as any proposals of legislation, any proposal for legislation or lawmaking. All of this needs to be furnished to the President by the Prime Minister under Article 78, Clause C. Therefore, even our third statement is correct. And with this, we can arrive at the correct answer, which is option B, 2 and 3 only. Let's move on to the next question. Again a PYQ. With reference to the Parliament of India, consider the following statements. Now we are again talking about the Parliament of India. And here statement 1 says a private member's bill is a bill presented by a non-minister MP. And statement 2 says a private member's bill requires prior permission of the president to be introduced. Let's first try to understand what a bill is. What exactly is a bill? So the bill is basically a draft of a proposed law or a draft of a proposed legislation. Why is it proposed? Because of course it has not become a law yet. It will become a law after it receives the assent from the president after being passed by both houses of the parliament. Now bill or bills can be either a government bill or they can be a private member's bill. They can be a private member's bill. Needless to say, a government bill is introduced by a minister. Whereas a private member's bill, as the name suggests, is introduced by a non-minister. Now, here again, a government bill can be either a money bill, which we discussed in the preceding video, or it could be a non-money bill. And again, your non-money bill can either be an ordinary bill or a constitution amendment bill. So this is the basic idea of how you can understand the division of bills. Now another thing that you need to note is that only certain bills, like let's say the money bill or the finance bill of some kind, requires the prior permission of the president. A normal private member's bill does not require the president's permission, prior permission of the president. So with this information in mind, let's go back to the question. A private member's bill is a bill presented by a non-minister MP. This is factually correct. This is an accurate statement. A private member's bill requires prior permission of the president to be introduced. No, we discussed only money bills or some finance bills may require president's prior permission. Otherwise, no other bill requires prior permission of the president. And with this, one only happens to be our correct answer. Now, regarding committees in the law-making process, some of these statements are given or have been given. Let's discuss first, before we arrive at our answer or attempt to solve this question, let's first discuss something about committees. Now, what are committees? See, committees are basically certain groups in the parliament that are used to scrutinize proposed laws or proposed legislatures. Why? Because the parliament is huge and unwieldy. Basically, the parliament is unwieldy. Why? Because it neither has the time nor the expertise to deal with various forms of legislation that it has to pass. The parliament is a complex body. Of course, its main function is legislation. However, it also has other varied functions that we discussed in a couple of videos ago. So, because it is huge and it is not equipped, let's say, to deal with all matters, therefore, we require certain committees, certain parliamentary committees to deal or to scrutinize the clauses, the various clauses and the content of a bill. A bill is what? As we discussed, a bill is a draft of a proposed law. Now, suppose there are, let's say, 4 conditions or 4 criteria meeting which a committee would be called a parliamentary committee. Otherwise, they would simply be, it could be any other committee, even for example, a consultative committee. But to be a parliamentary committee, it has to meet 4 criteria, and these are: first, it should be either elected or appointed by the speaker or the chairman of the Rajya Sabha or nominated by them. All right. So the body or the committee or its members should either be elected or appointed or nominated by the speakers of the Lok Sabha or the chairman of the Rajya Sabha, either of the two. And then they should again work under the speaker or the chairperson. So they should be reporting to or working under the direction of, working in the direction of the chairman of the Rajya Sabha or the speaker of the Lok Sabha. Now, there are also 2 other criteria. What are those? They are 3, that they should present their report, either to the Lok Sabha speaker or the Rajya Sabha chairman. And finally, that a secretariat for them should be provided by either of the or in either of the 2 houses. So these are the 4 criteria that make a committee a parliamentary committee. Now those are also of 2 kinds. Parliamentary committees are of 2 kinds, namely standing committees and ad hoc committees. Now, as the name suggests, standing committees are permanent committees, whereas ad hoc committees dissolve after they have served their purpose. They could be inquiry committees as well. All right. So, now the most important thing is that we discuss that the Parliament does not have the time or let's say the expertise to consult with matters. So then they refer these matters or these clauses of the legislations or the legislations in their entirety to the Parliament, and therefore Parliament is to the parliamentary committees, and therefore these committees are called miniature Parliament as well. All right. So they are known as miniature Parliament or miniature legislature. However, please note that the decisions or the advice of the parliamentary committees are legally not binding. They are non-binding in nature. However, they are so important and they hold such significance that the Parliament rarely rejects those recommendations. Now, with this information in mind, let's try and attempt our question. A, their recommendations are legally binding on the houses. The last thing that we just discussed is that their recommendations are advisory in nature. Yet, they hold immense significance, immense value, and hence they are rarely rejected. However, legally not binding. Hence, we can eliminate this option A. Option B says they act as miniature legislatures, facilitating detailed scrutiny of bills. their primary function is to scrutinize the bills clause by clause, and various experts are, or technical experts are also included in these committees. All right. So yes, this is correct. Option C says they can introduce bills directly in the parliament. No, the concerned ministry for the subject would introduce the bills in the parliament. So in your book, the example is given of the, for example, the bill related to reducing or increasing the age of marriage, for women from 18 to 21 years. Who is going to introduce this bill? It's going to be introduced by Law and Justice Ministry. All right. However, since it concerns women, some contribution from the Ministry of Women Welfare as well as Child Welfare will also be present in it, but it will be introduced by the Law Ministry. Now, option D says they are chaired only by members of ruling party. This again is inaccurate. Inaccurate because certain committees are conventionally chaired by the members of the opposition. For example, your Public Accounts Committee, it is chaired by the members of the opposition. Since 1967, such a convention has been followed. So this is not provided constitutionally, but such a convention has been followed, and this is because it is the job of this committee, it is the mandate of this committee to scrutinize the reports presented by the CAG, or the Comptroller and Auditor General, which deals with the receipts and expenditures of the money by the union government as well as the state governments. So in order to ensure impartiality and fairness, it is recommended, or conventionally it is followed, that the PAC is chaired by, or the Public Accounts Committee is chaired by, an opposition party person. So this again can be ruled out. Of course, in committees like the Estimates Committee, the chair is normally, or usually, the chair is from a ruling party. All right, but this does not apply universally. Therefore, option B is our correct answer. Consider the following statements regarding ordinary non-money bills. 1. They can be introduced in either house of the parliament. This statement is factually accurate. The non-money bills, the ordinary legislations, can be introduced in either house of the parliament, which also implies that both houses of the parliament have equal powers in this regard. So the money bill can be introduced. Non-money bill, ordinary bills can be introduced either in the Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha. The money bills, however, have to be introduced only in the Lok Sabha. Statement 2 says they must be passed by both houses to become law. This is again factually correct. They must be, any bill has to be passed by both houses of the parliament in order to become law. But then, after being passed by both houses of the parliament, it must also be followed by the president's assent. The president has to assent to the bill before it can become a law. The third statement says the president cannot withhold assent to such a bill once it has been passed by both the houses. Now, if we were to talk about the money bill, the president cannot withhold assent. This is correct. And usually he does not require withholding assent. Why? Because the money bill is introduced with the prior recommendation of the president. Prior recommendation of the president. However, with the ordinary bills, it is not that the president cannot withhold assent. On the contrary, we have also discussed it in the past that the president has a discretion over here, in the sense that he can send back the bill for reconsideration once. That is something that we have done. We have discussed in the previous videos that the president can send a bill for reconsideration once. After that, of course, if the bill is passed with or without changes, the president is bound to give his assent to the bill. However, at least once the president can send the bill for reconsideration. So it is not the case that the president cannot withhold his assent. All right. We also discussed about the pocket veto of the president. The pocket veto of the president. So again, this statement happens to be inaccurate, and therefore the correct answer is 1 and 2 only, option A. Now regarding Parliament's financial control. So we discussed that the Parliament has quite a few functions, including, let's say, constituent functions. Of course, it has law-making functions, but other than that, we discussed quite a few functions of the Parliament, including this one, right? So it has constituent functions when we said that it could make changes to the or amendments to the Constitution, that it also has certain judicial functions like involvement in the removal of the vice president or impeachment of the judges or impeachment of the president. So also it also has certain financial functions. By financial function, it is meant that the Parliament can actually scrutinize the government's spending, the receipts as well as the expenditure of the government. Now regarding that, a few statements have been given to you and we have to arrive at the correct answer. So statement 1 says the annual financial statement is presented in both houses simultaneously. What is your annual financial statement? The annual financial statement is popularly or commonly known as budget under Article 112. Now please tell me in the comments, what is Article 110 dealing with? Please let me know in the comments, what is Article 110 dealing with? All right. Statement 2 says the Rajya Sabha cannot vote. Let's go back to the first statement. So we are talking about the budget and it is presented in both houses of the Parliament simultaneously. Now, it might appear, because it is so said in the Constitution, that the president will cause to be laid before both the houses. The president will cause to be laid before both houses an annual statement regarding the receipts and expenditures of the government for that year. So while the term cause to be laid before both houses is used constitutionally, and if we go by this seems to be an accurate statement, but in practice, your finance minister introduces the budget. In practice, the budget is introduced by the finance minister and it is introduced in the Lok Sabha. It is introduced in the Lok Sabha and then a copy is laid in front of the Rajya Sabha. So then our first statement becomes inaccurate. All right. Statement 2 says the Rajya Sabha cannot vote on demands for grants. This is absolutely correct. What is the meaning for demands for grants? Demands for grants simply means, or it simply represents the requests by various ministries, for money from the Consolidated Fund of India. So this is your demand of grants. Now, this is also accurate. In terms of financial control, the financial control rests with the Lok Sabha because the Council of Ministers is collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha. So the Rajya Sabha can of course discuss the budget, but it cannot vote on demands for grants, and voting on demands for grants is the exclusive privilege of the Lok Sabha, and therefore statement 2 is accurate. Statement 3 says money bills require prior recommendation of the president. We have discussed it in sufficient detail and this is accurate. In fact, under Article 117, the Constitution goes on to say that any matter or any bill related to monies or taxation or any amendment making provision specified or related to Article 110 has to be or cannot be introduced except with the prior permission of the president. So basically, yes, in simple words, money bills have to be introduced with the prior permission of the president, and therefore this is also accurate and we arrive at a correct answer, which is option B. And I hope all of this is making clear sense to you. Now, which of the following ensures that Parliament does not misuse its power over finances? So we know that the financial control of the government rests with the Parliament and primarily with the Lok Sabha. And we also discussed how everything is scrutinized by parliamentary committees. So here again, if we look at various options, Finance Commission is not a part of the Parliament. It is a constitutional body under Article 280, which deals with distribution of revenue between center and states. So we are dealing with distribution of revenue between center and states. And again, it is not dealing with the propriety or the fairness of what has been spent by the government or not, but simply saying that this is how it's to be allocated, how the financial resources have to be allocated. And again, it is a recommendatory body in nature. Option B is CAG and Public Accounts Committee. So again, CAG is the Comptroller and Auditor General of India. Again, a constitutional body. Please tell me which article deals with the CAG. All right. And Public Accounts Committee. Now, this committee has a head, we just discussed, has a chair, which is from the opposition party. And this committee's main job is to, or main mandate is to, scrutinize the reports that have been submitted by the CAG. The CAG is the financial watchdog of India. It is our financial watchdog. And of course, what it does is it makes the reports, it audits all the expenses and receipts and expenses of the government as well as the central government as well as the state government. Then it prepares the report and lays it before the Public Accounts Committee, whose primary mandate is to audit these reports. And therefore, CAG is considered to be a friend, guide and philosopher to the Public Accounts Committee. And why the chair is a leader or the chair is a member of the opposition? Simply so that there can be fairness and there can be no bias and no sense of or no fear of unfair practices. All right. So this is actually a way in which we can say that the Parliament ensures that the government is not misusing its power, or even the Parliament is not misusing its power over finances. Again, Niti Aayog is basically a policy think tank and not a financial body. So it is basically a policy think tank. And finally, Planning Department of Ministry of Finance. It is again a part of the executive machinery and not a body which deals with scrutinizing. All right. So it is a part of the executive machinery. So your option B is the correct answer. And with this, I have brought to you a practice question. Please take a look at it. So students, we have been primarily covering your NCERT and you have seen how useful reading the NCERTs is, because a couple of direct questions we've seen have been lifted line by line from the NCERTs. So please go and check out Drishti IAS's NCERT Online Foundation course, and please try and attempt this question and send me the answers in the comment section. Thanks for watching.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.